Okay, I was just repeating a bit I got wrong on this. Alright, sorry. This is part 2. The Golden Thorn, part 2. This is the having to do it again because it fucked up. Alright, where was I? We'll take some specs from my hat. Don't know. A glint of gold caught the boy's eye in the light of his torch beam, and Toby gazed at the lion's left forepaw. And there, sticking out of Aslan's foot, was a golden thorn. The child tugged at the thorn, but it was no use. No matter how hard he struggled, it could not pull the jagged thorn out of the lion's foot. It must be enchanted, Toby muttered to himself. Fuck it, I can't even loosen it. So I can't even loosen it. I can't read. Twit true, came a voice from high in a nearby tree. Toby shone his torch towards the voice. Who are you? He asked, looking up at the old brown owl. The owl's orange eyes glowed. Sorry, the owl's up. Sorry, the owl's up. So I'll start that again. Hang on, hold on a second. Twit true, came a voice from high up in a nearby tree. Toby shone his torch towards the voice. Who are you? He asked, looking up the old brown owl. The owl's eyes glowed a luminous orange colour in the torchlight. I'm Glimfeather, yawned the owl, flapping his tired old wings. Who are you? Toby, answered the boy. You won't wake him like that, suggested Glimfeather. The lion is an enchanted sleep. What happened? Asked Toby. That thorn in his foot, answered the owl. Twit true. It is not an ordinary thorn. No, I can't see a thing. Fat. So it's not an ordinary thorn. What do you mean? That golden thorn is from the crown of thorns, explained Glimfeather. What crown of thorns? Asked the boy. The one that Jesus wore on his crucifixion, sighed the tired, wise old owl. And nobody believes in Jesus anymore, laughed Toby. He's just a fairy tale. Like Narnia and Aslan? Questioned Glimfeather. Toby frowned. Did Jesus really exist? He asked. Does Narnia exist? Glimfeather flapped his wings and blinked his big orange eyes. Do you think all of this is just a dream? Glimfeather spun his head around. So Glimfeather spun his head around 180 degrees. Do I exist? He asked. Maybe I'm asleep and this is just a world of make-believe, suggested Toby. What of the world of man? Hooted Glimfeather. Isn't that a world of make-believe? What do you mean? Sighed Toby. I've been to your world. Glimfeather paused. I've flown through your sky. Doesn't every invention begin with an idea? Even your metal cars and your internet were once only just a dream in somebody's head. But my world is real, insisted Toby. Were computers real 100 years ago? Asked the old wise owl. Of course not, smiled the boy. What about mobile telephones and televisions? Were they not invented by somebody? Asked Glimfeather. Of course they were, answered Toby. But they didn't exist 100 years ago, did they? Replied the owl. I suppose not, agreed the boy. So even the real world is a land of make-believe, explained Glimfeather. Toby nodded. What happened to Narnia? He asked. Shit, hold on a second. Sorry, where was I? Yeah. Sorry. Let's set up a bit. Oh. So, Toby nodded. What happened to Narnia? He asked. The shadows came, hooted the owl. In the land of Adam, the children forgot how to dream. And as they forgot the magical places, the creatures of Narnia fell into a deep sleep, and soon, very soon, even the golden sun forgot how to shine. The stars dimmed and the moon lost his smile. Glimfeather yawned, and Aslan, yes. Even the great lion himself fell under the spell of the shadows. The people of the world had television and computers. Why would they need dreams? Is there any way to wake up Aslan? Asked Toby. There might be a way, sighed Glimfeather, yawning again. I'm tired. Twit true. I need to sleep. How? Asked Toby impatiently. The owl hooted and blinked his big orange eyes. Find Puddleglum, suggested Glimfeather. Who? Asked the boy. Who? Replied the owl. Twit true, who? Twit true. Glimfeather closed his eyes and began to snore. A fat lot of use you are, sighed the boy. Toby shrugged his shoulders and continued walking through the forest. After some hours, the ground beneath Toby's feet became muddy and soft. The leaves stopped crunching under his shoes, and the boy found himself up to his ankles in mud, walking through a damp, mossy marshland, a stagnant swamp where no sane man would have any wish to venture into. Toby kept walking. The mud was up to his knees. Who is Puddleglum? He wondered. Toby stopped on a small mound of dry land. He leant against a tree for a few minutes before sitting down. He untied the wet laces of his muddy shoes and emptied the dirty water inside his boots. He took off his socks and squeezed them, wringing them with his hands. Some dreamland, he thought to himself. He put his damp socks back on, and then his shoes. Toby stood up and shouted, Puddleglum! There was no reply. The boy continued walking through the swamp. After some time trundling through the marsh, Toby caught a faint glimmer of light in the distance. He walked towards the lantern, glowing in the darkness, until he came to a battered, thatched wooden wigwam, and there, sitting on the porch, was what can only be described as a frog-faced, grey-haired man wearing a tall pointed hat, perched on the end of his glowing red nose, snoring heavily. The boy shone his torch on the toady man's face. The old man lifted his peaked hat above his eyes. Stretched out his arms. So stretched out his arms and yawned. You must be Toby, he sighed. I've been waiting for you. The old man brushed the cobwebs off the jacket of his sleeves. Have you been waiting long? Asked the boy. Sorry. The old man lit his pipe and breathed a heavy sigh. Only 65 years, huffed Puddleglum. Sorry, Toby shrugged his shoulders. Don't worry about it, smiled the Marshpickle. I was asleep anyway. He chuckled. To be or not to be? That was the question. Are you Puddleglum? Asked Toby. Asked Toby, weary after his long journey. Of course I am, sighed the old man. I suppose I'd better light a fire, he huffed. You do look rather damp. I've been walking through that swamp for hours, sighed Toby. Puddleglum threw a few more logs onto the fire. He took off his hat and scratched his head. So, you are trying to wake up Aslan, are you? He asked. Toby swallowed the fish that the Marshpickle had just caught. There's a golden thorn. So there's a golden thorn stuck in his foot. It won't budge. He's in some kind of a coma. I'm not surprised, sighed Puddleglum. No one here stays awake for very long these days. Why not? Asked the boy. The Marshpickle stood up and warmed his hands by the burning fire. Narnia is a land of dreams, he muttered. How could the old lion stay awake if the children of the earth forgot how to dream? Do you like your fish? Asked Puddleglum. It was very tasty, replied Toby. I once tried to catch eels, sighed the frog-faced man. Complete failure. I was going to make an eel stew, but all I could catch were these salmon. It's very tasty, insisted the boy. Salmon are stupid fish, sighed Puddleglum. They're always swimming against the waves. They never go with the flow of things, don't you know? He breathed a heavy sigh. I like it, insisted the boy. Puddleglum raised his right forefinger. But you would have loved my eelworm stew. I never catch anything but eels, mostly. Strange, isn't it? Maybe even the eels have fallen asleep. Toby mopped up his plate with a piece of hot, freshly baked bread. Well, he smiled. At least the salmon are still awake. Fish don't sleep, sighed the Marshpickle. They can't close their eyes. Maybe that's why they swim upstream, so they won't be washed away by the tide. Toby smiled. Have you any idea how I could, Sorry. Have you any idea how I could wake up Aslan? The Marshpickle shrugged his heavy shoulders. Have you tried a loud noise, perhaps a trumpet? He suggested. I don't have a trumpet, sighed the boy. Susan had one, replied Puddleglum. Who's Susan? An old friend of Father Christmas. It's a long story, sighed the full-faced man. Have you tried shouting? The marshal scratched his head. Toby nodded. Have you ever been to Cair Paravel? Asked the paddleman. Where's that? To the north, I think. But maybe it's south or to the west or perhaps the east. You don't know anything, do you? Huffed Toby. I know you should not give up hope, yawned the marshal. I'd come with you, he yawned again, but I am really so very tired. The marshal scratched his right ear and pulled out a small black spider. I wonder where that came from, he sighed. Cobwebs, probably, suggested Toby. So tired, whispered Puddleglum. How do I find Cair Paravel? Asked the young boy. Follow your heart. Or your footsteps, suggested the marshwiggle, putting his pointed hat over his eyes. I need to sleep now, he yawned. We all need to dream. Puddleglum fell into a deep sleep. Toby nudged him with his elbow a few times, but he would not wake up again. The boy stood up and turned on his torch. He continued his journey, tramping through the thick green swamp. Grey mist hung heavy. Sorry, I get too close to you, I know. You don't like it, I do click. Sorry. So the boy stood up and turned on his torch. He continued his journey, tramping through the thick green slime. A grey mist hung heavy in the air. I can hardly see where I'm going in all this smog. Toby muttered to himself. How in Aslan's name am I ever going to find this place, this Cair Paravel? It seemed like days, but it was probably only a few hours. But slowly, ever so slowly, the thick mist began to clear. And there in the distance Toby could see a faint pink glow coming from the faraway hills. Could that be Cair Paravel? He wondered to himself. It took some time to reach the palace, and when he got there it was not what he had expected to see. There were 2 guards at the castle gates, sitting down and snoring in a deep sleep. The boy crept past the guards. He eventually found the throne room of the palace, and sitting on an old golden throne was the King of Narnia himself, King Rilian. He was an old man now, with a thick grey beard and a mane of long shaggy white hair. Cobwebs hung from the walls, and the king was in a deep slumber. Toby nudged the king in his ribs, but he did not wake up. He continued snoring. On the lap of the old king there sat an old brass horn, Susan's trumpet. The boy picked up the trumpet and dusted off the cobwebs. He blew into the mouthpiece, and a cloud of dust blurted out of the end with a muffling sound. Toby blew on the trumpet again. Foot, foot, went the noise of the brass horn. King Rilian opened his eyes and yawned. Why did you wake me? Asked the tired old man. I was asleep. Why were you sleeping? Queried Toby. I was bored, answered the king. Why? Asked the boy. I'm tired, yawned the old man, closing his eyes. I need you, insisted Toby. Nobody needs kings any more, sighed the old man. I do, insisted Toby. There has to be some way to wake up Aslan. Wakes him? Asked the king, wearily. He has a golden thorn stuck in his paw, sighed the boy. I can't wake him up. King William reached into a pocket of his purple robe and produced a small blue bottle. "Try this," he suggests, handing the bottle to Toby. "What is it?" asked the boy. "It's a potion," yawned the tired old king. "An elixir. A magical cordial." You might say, King William was very tired, but be wary. There was only one drop left. "I'm tired," yawned the king again. "I really need to go to sleep." King William closed his eyes. "Maybe we'll meet again one day," he yawned. "Perhaps in our dreams." King William began to snore. Toby took the magic potion